My sister raised a glass on my wedding day and said, "Your husband deserves better," and my husband just laughed. The whole room went quiet when she said those words. My sister, holding a champagne flute, stared directly at my new husband at my wedding reception. The silence that followed felt like it lasted forever. Mark's laughter broke through the tension, but in that moment, I knew something had shifted. I knew I was marrying the right man, but I also knew my sister had just made the biggest mistake of her life. Everyone thinks this is a story about a bad husband. They are wrong. This is a story about a bad sister and how I finally got my revenge. My sister was always the one who wanted everything I had. But what she didn't know was that her cruel words on my wedding day would be the start of her own undoing. What she didn't realize was that her words would become the foundation of a very big mistake. And what I couldn't have imagined was that my husband would help me get the sweetest revenge. I, 26, F, had always been in the shadow of my sister, Bethany, 28, F. She was the golden child in our family. Beautiful, smart, and always the center of attention. I was always the second choice. Growing up, if I got a toy, she would want it. If I made a friend, she would steal them away. If I had any success, she would find a way to make it about her. This pattern continued into our adult lives, but it became especially true with my husband, Mark. Mark and I had been together for 5 years when we got married. We met in college during our junior year. I was studying graphic design, and he was in the architecture program. We were in the same elective art history class. I remember the first time I saw him. He was sitting in the front row, taking notes with this intense focus. He had dark hair that fell into his eyes when he leaned over his notebook. When the professor asked a question about Renaissance architecture, Mark gave this passionate answer that made everyone in the room pay attention. After class, I worked up the courage to talk to him about his answer. We ended up talking for 3 hours in the campus coffee shop. What made Mark different from anyone else I had dated was that he actually saw me. Not as Bethany's little sister, not as the quiet one in the family, but as myself. He asked me questions about my art and actually listened to the answers. He remembered things and kept finding excuses to mention her achievements. "Oh, Mark, you work in architecture? I just got promoted to senior marketing manager at my firm. We work with a lot of architectural firms. Maybe we should get coffee and discuss potential partnerships," she had said. Mark just smiled politely and held my hand tighter under the table. Over the years, she tried everything to get his attention. The flirting was constant. At every family gathering, she would position herself next to him. She would wear revealing outfits and make sure to bend over in front of him. She would text him about professional opportunities that never materialized. Mark showed me every text, and we would laugh about them together. But the flirting wasn't even the worst part. The sabotage was what really showed her true colors. I remember one incident particularly well. Mark's parents were coming to town, and I had planned this perfect dinner at my apartment. I had spent days preparing. I bought a beautiful white dress specifically for the occasion. I wanted to make a good impression because Mark had told me his mother was very particular about appearances. Bethany knew about this dinner because I had foolishly mentioned it at a family lunch. She showed up at my apartment an hour before Mark's parents were supposed to arrive, claiming she wanted to help me set up. "I just want to make sure everything is perfect for you," she had said with that fake sweet smile she always wore. I should have known better. I was in the kitchen checking on the roast when I heard her call out from the living room. "Oh my God, I'm so sorry," she said. When I rushed out, I found my beautiful white dress covered in red wine. She was holding an empty glass and had this look of fake shock on her face. "I was just admiring your dress and I tripped. This is so clumsy of me," she said. But I saw her smile. It was small, but it was there. A little satisfied smirk that she quickly tried to hide. I had to wear an old black dress that didn't fit right. Mark's mother made several comments about how casual I looked. Bethany had offered to stay and help with dinner, and I couldn't kick her out without looking petty. She spent the entire evening charming Mark's parents, telling them about her successful career and her volunteer work. She managed to make me look like an inadequate mess in my own home. "But you," my mother would say, "she's trying to be supportive." So I bit my tongue. I smiled at family dinners while she made subtle digs at my career. I stayed quiet when she would joke about how Mark was too good for me. I kept the peace because I thought that was what family did. Our engagement should have been a happy time, and for the most part it was. Mark proposed on our 4-year anniversary during a weekend trip to the mountains. He had planned this elaborate hike to a waterfall, and when we got there, he got down on one knee. The ring was perfect, a vintage Art Deco design that he had found at an estate sale. He said it reminded him of the artwork I loved. He had even had it resized and cleaned without me knowing. The proposal was perfect, and I was floating on air when we drove back to tell our families. My parents were thrilled, or at least they acted like it. My mom immediately started talking about wedding plans and venues. My dad gave Mark a hearty handshake and welcomed him officially to the family. But Bethany's reaction was different. She looked at my ring and said, "Oh, it's vintage. How unique." The way she said unique made it sound like a disease. Then she turned to Mark and said, "I hope you know what you're getting into. Marriage is a big commitment." Mark just smiled and said he was the luckiest man alive. Bethany's face tightened, and she excused herself from the room. After we announced our engagement, Bethany became even more distant. She would make snide comments about every aspect of our wedding planning. When I chose my venue, a beautiful garden location, she said it was too outdoor and that guests would be uncomfortable. When I picked my dress, she said it made me look wider than I was. When I selected my wedding colors, blush and gold, she called them cliché. Every decision I made was wrong in her eyes. But the worst part was how she would frame these comments as concern. "I just want your day to be perfect," she would say while tearing apart everything I chose. She also started planting seeds of doubt with our parents. She would have private conversations with our mother about how young I was to get married. She would tell our father that Mark seemed controlling because he had opinions about the wedding. She suggested to extended family members that we were rushing into things. They've only been told me what had happened. Bethany had tried to change the flowers from roses to lilies, claiming I had changed my mind. She had also tried to adjust the seating chart to put herself at the main family table instead of the regular family table I had assigned her to. When I confronted her about this, she said she was just trying to help and that the wedding planner must have misunderstood. Mark was my rock during all of this. He saw how stressed I was becoming and suggested we elope. "We don't need all this drama," he had said. "I just want to marry you." But I refused to let Bethany take this away from me. I had dreamed of my wedding day since I was a little girl, and I wasn't going to let her ruin it. So we pushed forward with the planning, and I tried to limit her involvement as much as possible. I gave her the minimal required bridesmaid duties and nothing more. This, of course, became another source of conflict. She complained to our parents that I was excluding her, that I was being a bridezilla. They pressured me to include her more, so I reluctantly made her my maid of honor just to keep the peace. Making her maid of honor was a mistake. She used the position to create even more chaos. She planned a bachelorette party that was everything I didn't want. I had asked for a quiet wine-tasting weekend with close friends. She organized a loud night at clubs with people I barely knew. She invited her own friends and made the entire event about her. She gave a speech at the bachelorette about how she hoped marriage would mature me. She got drunk and spent the night telling embarrassing stories about my childhood, including the time I wet the bed at age 7 during a thunderstorm. My actual friends were horrified, but her friends laughed along. She also tried to manipulate the bridal party dynamics. She would organize bonding activities that excluded certain bridesmaids she didn't like. She created a group chat where she would passive-aggressively criticize the other bridesmaids' choices for their dresses and accessories, even though I had given them freedom to choose within certain guidelines. She would schedule dress fittings at times when she knew certain people couldn't attend, then act surprised when they missed them. One bridesmaid, my college friend Jessica, almost dropped out because of Bethany's behavior. I had to personally call Jessica and beg her to stay, promising I would handle Bethany. Messages in one day about the ribbon color on the bouquets. Mark finally had enough and told me to block her number until the wedding day. I didn't, but I should have. 3 days before the wedding, Bethany orchestrated what she called an intervention. She gathered my mother and 2 aunts and brought them to my apartment while Mark was at work. They sat me down and told me they were concerned about how I was handling wedding stress. Bethany had convinced them that I was having a breakdown, that I was being unreasonable and difficult. She had shown them selectively edited text messages where I had firmly told her no about various changes she wanted to make. She had painted a picture of me as an out-of-control bride who was ruining family relationships. My mother actually suggested postponing the wedding until I could get myself together. I had to spend 3 hours defending myself and showing them the full context of our conversations before they finally left. On the actual wedding day, Bethany showed up late to the bridal suite. All the other bridesmaids had been there for hours, helping me get ready and sharing champagne and stories. When Bethany finally arrived, she made a scene about how the makeup artist was running behind and how this was going to throw off the entire timeline. The makeup artist hadn't been running behind until Bethany demanded a completely different look than what we had discussed at the trial run. She wanted smoky eyes instead of the natural look we had planned. She wanted her hair in an elaborate updo instead of the simple style that matched the other bridesmaids. While getting ready, she made several comments about my appearance. "Are you sure about that lipstick color? It makes your teeth look yellow," she said. "Did you consider shapewear under your dress? It would smooth out your hips," she added. "Your hair looks a bit flat in the back. Maybe we should tease it more," she suggested. Each comment was delivered with a concerned smile, as if she was doing me a favor. My other bridesmaids tried to counter her negativity, telling me I looked beautiful, but her words had already done their damage. I spent my wedding day feeling self-conscious about every aspect of my appearance. She also tried to create drama with the photographer. She insisted on specific poses that would highlight her and minimize the other bridesmaids. She complained that the photographer was spending too much time on shots of just Mark and me. She actually interrupted our first look moment, claiming she needed to fix my practically pushing me out of the way. She would wait until the photographer was about to shoot, then suddenly need to adjust something about her appearance, making everyone wait. She accidentally stepped on my dress train twice, causing small tears that my maid of honor, Sarah, had to quickly fix with fashion tape. She also spilled her mimosa on my wedding shoes, claiming her hands were shaking from excitement. I had to wear my backup shoes, which weren't as comfortable and gave me blisters by the end of the night. The ceremony itself went smoothly. Thank goodness. Bethany managed to keep her mouth shut during the vows, though I could see her rolling her eyes when Mark said I was the most beautiful woman he had ever known. She stood behind me with a fake smile plastered on her face, playing the role of supportive sister for the audience. During the ring exchange, she fumbled with my bouquet, nearly dropping it. During the Unity Candle ceremony, she audibly sighed, loud enough for the front rows to hear. The photographer later told me that he had to delete several photos because Bethany was making faces in the background. She claimed she had something in her eye, but the photographer said it was clearly intentional. After the ceremony, during the cocktail hour, Bethany cornered several of Mark's relatives to tell them stories about me. I heard from Mark's cousin later that she had spent 20 minutes telling them about how I had struggled in college and almost didn't graduate. This was a complete lie. I had graduated with honors, but I had changed majors once from business to graphic design, which she spun into a story of academic failure. She also told them that I had been wild in college, implying I had slept around, when in reality I had dated 2 people before Mark. She told Mark's grandmother that I didn't want children, which was completely untrue and caused an awkward conversation later when his grandmother asked me about it with concern. She also cornered Mark's business partners, trying to network for her own benefit. She gave them her business card and talked about her marketing expertise, using my wedding as a networking opportunity. One of Mark's colleagues later told him that Bethany had implied that Mark and I were having financial troubles and that she was helping us pay for the wedding, which was completely false. She had contributed nothing to our wedding costs, and everything felt perfect. Then came time for the speeches. Mark's best man, his brother David, gave a wonderful toast about how he had never seen Mark as happy as he was with me. He told a funny story about Mark calling him at 2 a.m. after our first date, saying he had met the woman he was going to marry. Everyone laughed and raised their glasses. My college roommate Sarah, who was supposed to give the maid of honor speech with Bethany, gave a touching speech about our friendship and how perfect Mark and I were together. She talked about how I had drawn sketches of wedding dresses years before I met Mark, and how the dress I was wearing looked exactly like those sketches. It was sweet and personal and everything a wedding speech should be. Then it was Bethany's turn. She stood up slowly, making sure all eyes were on her. She was holding her champagne flute like it was a weapon. She didn't have notes or cards. She just stood there for a moment, looking at Mark and me with this strange expression on her face. She cleared her throat several times, drawing out the anticipation. The room grew quiet, waiting for her to begin. "I've known my sister her entire life," she started. "I've watched her grow up, make mistakes, learn lessons." Her tone was odd, not celebratory but almost condescending. "And today, I watch her marry Mark." She paused and looked directly at Mark. "Mark, you're a good man, a successful man, a handsome man." Another pause. The energy in the room was shifting. People were starting to look uncomfortable. "You could have had anyone," she continued. "Anyone at all." She turned to look at me. "And you chose my sister." The way she said it made it sound like Mark had made a terrible error in judgment. "I've watched your relationship over the years," she went on. "I've seen how patient you are with her, how understanding, how you overlook things." My heart was pounding. I could feel Mark's hand tighten on mine under the table. She raised her glass higher. "So here's to you, Mark. You're a saint for putting up with everything." She looked him dead in the eye. "You deserve better than what you're getting. You deserve someone who can match your success, your ambition, your potential." The room was completely silent now. "But you chose love over logic." A glass to my beautiful wife. The woman I don't deserve but am lucky enough to have chosen me. The room erupted in awkward applause and forced cheers. People raised their glasses, but the energy was still tense. The band quickly started playing to move things along. Bethany sat down with this satisfied smirk on her face, like she had accomplished something great. Mark pulled me close and whispered, "Don't let her win. This is our day." But the damage was done. For the rest of the reception, I could feel people looking at me differently, wondering what Bethany had meant, what flaws Mark was overlooking. The whispers started almost immediately. I could see small groups of guests huddled together, clearly discussing what had just happened. Some guests were looking at me with pity, others with curiosity, wondering what terrible secrets Bethany might know. The magical atmosphere of our wedding reception had been poisoned. Even the waitstaff seemed uncomfortable, moving through the room with awkward efficiency. The band played upbeat songs, but the dance floor remained largely empty for the first few songs as people processed what they had witnessed. Several guests came up to me throughout the night to tell me that Bethany was out of line. Mark's Aunt Helen, a woman who never minced words, said Bethany was clearly jealous and bitter. "That girl has problems," she said bluntly. "Don't you pay her any mind." My cousin Tom said he had never seen such inappropriate behavior at a wedding. "If someone had done that at my wedding, I would have had them removed," he said. Even the wedding planner pulled me aside to ask if I was okay and if I needed her to have Bethany removed. I said no, not wanting to cause more of a scene, but I appreciated the offer. Meanwhile, Bethany acted like nothing had happened. She danced, she drank, she laughed with her friends. She took selfies and posted them on social media with captions about celebrating love and being the best maid of honor. She had ruined my wedding reception and didn't care at all. When the cake cutting came, she pushed her way to the front to get the best view, nearly knocking over my elderly grandmother. During the bouquet toss, she aggressively shoved other women out of the way to catch it, then made a speech about how she hoped to find a love as interesting as ours. Of the reception was a blur of forced smiles and trying to salvage what should have been the happiest day of my life. Mark never left my side, constantly whispering words of encouragement and love. His family rallied around us, making sure to loudly compliment our relationship and our future together whenever Bethany was within earshot. His mother made a point of telling everyone near her what a perfect daughter-in-law I was. His father pulled Mark aside and told him that cutting toxic people out of your life was sometimes necessary, even if they were family. When it came time for us to leave for our honeymoon suite, Bethany tried to hug me goodbye. I stepped back, unable to let her touch me after what she had done. "Come on, don't be like that," she said. "It was just a joke. You're too sensitive." I looked her in the eye and said, "You're no longer my sister." She laughed and said I was being dramatic. "You'll get over it," she said. "You always do." That was the moment I decided she would never be forgiven. The fact that she expected me to just accept her cruelty like I always had before showed me exactly how she saw me, as a doormat who would always come back for more abuse. Mark's reaction in our honeymoon suite was what really mattered to me. After the reception, he held me while I cried off my carefully applied makeup. "I know what she was trying to do," he said. "She wanted to plant seeds of doubt, make me think I made a mistake, but she doesn't understand that her opinion means nothing to me. You're everything I want and more." He spent our wedding night reminding me of all the reasons he loved me, all the ways I was perfect for him. "She's jealous," he said. "She sees what we have and she can't stand it. Her reaction proves that we have something real and beautiful." He also told me something I hadn't known. During the cocktail hour, Bethany had approached him privately. She had told him that I had a history of mental health issues that I hadn't disclosed to him. She claimed I had been hospitalized in high school for depression, which was a complete lie. She said she was worried about him and wanted to make sure he knew what he was getting into. Mark had shut her down immediately, telling her that spreading lies about me on our wedding day was pathetic and desperate. He hadn't told me at the time because he didn't want to upset me more, but he wanted me to know the full extent of her behavior. Our day there. "We're not going to let her ruin this too," he said firmly. "We're going to enjoy our honeymoon, and when we get back, we're going to deal with her once and for all." While we were gone, the wedding incident became family drama. My phone was flooded with messages from relatives. Some were supportive, saying Bethany had crossed a line. Others, mostly from my parents' generation, said I should forgive her and move on. My Aunt Linda, my mom's sister, sent a long message about how family should stick together and how Bethany was probably going through something difficult. "Maybe she's depressed," she wrote. "Maybe she's struggling with seeing her younger sister get married first." My grandmother called Bethany's behavior unfortunate, but said I should be the bigger person. "Family is family," she said in her voicemail. "You girls need to work this out." The pressure to forgive and forget was immense. I received at least 30 messages from various family members, all with the same theme of maintaining family unity. Some suggested that Bethany might have been drunk and didn't mean it. Others theorized that she was going through a hard time and had lashed out inappropriately. A few even suggested that maybe there was truth to what she said, and that I should reflect on my behavior. None of them seemed to understand the years of abuse that had led to this moment, or how her wedding speech was just the culmination of a lifetime of cruelty. Bethany herself sent me a text on day 5 of our honeymoon. "I'm sorry if you took my speech the wrong way. I was just trying to be funny and honest. You know I love you and want the best for you. Let's talk when you get back." It was the most non-apology apology I had ever received. She wasn't sorry for what she said, just sorry that I had taken it the wrong way. She followed up with 3 more texts over the next few days. "Stop being so dramatic. You're ruining Mom and Dad's week with your silent treatment. This is why people think you're difficult." Mark saw the texts and immediately deleted them. "We're not dealing with this now," he said. "This is our time." When we returned from our honeymoon, I made a decision. Bethany was cut out of our lives completely. I blocked her on all social media, blocked her phone number, and told my parents that she was not welcome in our home. This caused family, the networking at my reception, the private conversation with Mark where she tried to convince him I was mentally ill. I showed them the texts she had sent Mark over the years. the inappropriate messages that crossed boundaries. My father's response was that I should have told them sooner. My mother's response was that sisters fight sometimes, and I should get over it. Mark stepped in at this point. He told my parents that Bethany was toxic and that he wouldn't have her in our lives. She tried to humiliate my wife at our wedding, he said. She spread lies about her mental health. She has consistently tried to sabotage our relationship. That's unforgivable. If you can't understand that, then maybe you need to examine your own priorities. My parents were shocked that Mark would speak to them like that. They had always loved him because he was polite and respectful, but he was done being polite about Bethany. They left our apartment angry, saying we were tearing the family apart. The next few months were a battlefield of family politics. The family took sides quickly. My parents were firmly Team Bethany, saying I was overreacting and being dramatic. My grandmother agreed with them, saying family was family no matter what. But my younger cousins understood my position. They had seen Bethany's behavior over the years and weren't surprised by what happened. My cousin Amy told me that Bethany had tried to sabotage her relationship years ago by telling her boyfriend that Amy was cheating on him. My cousin Jake said Bethany had spread rumors about him at work that almost cost him a promotion. Mark's family was completely on our side. His mother called Bethany's speech the most disgusting display of jealousy she had ever seen. His father said we were right to cut her off. His brother David told us that Bethany had actually tried to get his phone number at the wedding, saying she wanted to console him about his brother's choice. Mark's extended family all agreed that Bethany's behavior was beyond unacceptable. This support helped, but it didn't make the situation with my own family any easier. Bethany played the victim perfectly. She told everyone who would listen that I had cut her off for no reason, that she had made one little joke at my wedding and I had overreacted. She cried to our extended family about how much she missed me, how she just wanted her sister back. She posted on social media about the which was a complete lie. She created fake screenshots of supposed dating profiles and showed them to people. She told others that I was controlling and jealous, that I had forced Mark to cut off his female friends. She said I had become a bridezilla, and that's why our friendship circle was smaller now. She even told people that I had physically attacked her at the wedding, which was why she wasn't in many of the later reception photos. Some people believed her lies. I lost several friendships over her rumors. My friend Claire, who had been at the wedding and heard the speech, somehow still believed Bethany's version of events where she was the victim. Another friend, Monica, said she didn't want to take sides and gradually stopped talking to me. It hurt to lose these friendships, but it also showed me who my real friends were. The ones who stayed saw through Bethany's lies and manipulation. She also went after my professional reputation. Bethany worked in marketing, and she had connections in various industries. She started telling people that my graphic design work was actually done by assistants, that I took credit for other people's creativity. She told potential clients that I was unreliable and difficult to work with. She even called one of my biggest clients directly, pretending to be concerned about the quality of work I was delivering. She suggested they might want to review their contract with me. I lost 2 clients because of her lies, and it took months to rebuild my reputation. One client, a boutique hotel chain, told me directly what Bethany had said. She had called them claiming to be a concerned industry professional who had heard about quality issues with my work. She said she had seen me plagiarize designs and that I was being investigated for copyright infringement. Thankfully, the client knew me well enough to be suspicious and called me directly. But the damage to my reputation was already spreading through industry circles. Mark was furious and wanted to take legal action, but I knew that would just make things worse with the family. The final straw came about 3 months after the wedding. Bethany showed up at my office uninvited. She walked past reception, claiming she was my sister and there was a family emergency. She burst into a client meeting I was having with a major company about redesigning their brand identity. "I need to talk to you," she said, completely ignoring my clients. "This has gone on long enough." I had to apologize profusely. "Always were too sensitive," she said as she left. "Mark's going to get tired of it eventually. He's going to see who you really are. And when he leaves you, don't come crying to me." My clients were understanding, but I could tell the interruption had damaged my credibility. That contract went to another designer. That night, I told Mark everything that had happened. We sat at our kitchen table and I laid it all out. The ruined client meeting, the lost contracts, the rumors, everything. Mark listened quietly, his jaw clenching tighter with each detail. When I finished, he said something that surprised me. "She's escalating because she's desperate," he said. "She sees that her usual tactics aren't working. You're not running back to make peace. You're not begging for her forgiveness. She's losing control and she can't stand it." He was right. Bethany had always been able to manipulate situations to her advantage. She would cause chaos, and then I would smooth things over to keep the peace. She would hurt me, and I would forgive her to maintain family harmony. But not this time. This time, I was standing my ground, and she didn't know how to handle it. Her escalating behavior was a sign of desperation, not strength. Mark suggested we document everything she was doing, just in case we needed it later. So we started keeping records of every incident, every rumor, every professional sabotage attempt. We also took practical steps to protect ourselves. We installed security cameras at our apartment after Bethany showed up uninvited twice, ringing the doorbell for 20 minutes each time. We had to warn our workplaces about her after she tried to get past security at Mark's architectural firm. We password-protected all our accounts and vendors after she tried to access our phone records by pretending to be me. We even had to change our locks after my mother admitted she had given Bethany our spare key in case of emergencies. About 6 months after the wedding, Bethany came up with a new plan. She suddenly had an amazing business idea that she couldn't stop talking about at family gatherings. She was going to start a company making custom wedding invitations. The irony wasn't lost on me, considering I had been designing and selling wedding invitations as part of my freelance work for 3 years. But Bethany acted like this was a completely original idea that she had come up with was already well established in this niche market. I had a portfolio of hundreds of designs, relationships with printers and paper suppliers, and a strong social media presence. I had designed invitations for several high-profile weddings that had been featured in magazines, but I had kept my business separate from family drama, so Bethany had no idea how successful I actually was. She thought I just did little design projects on the side. The next week, Bethany called me. It was the first time she had been able to reach me since I had blocked her number, but she was calling from a different phone. "I have a business proposition for you," she said, her voice sweet as honey. "I know things have been tense between us, but I think this could be a fresh start." She wanted to meet for coffee to discuss it. Against my better judgment, and mostly out of curiosity, I agreed to meet her. At the coffee shop, Bethany laid out her plan. She wanted us to be partners in her wedding invitation business. "You have some design experience," she said, massively understating my expertise, "and I have the business acumen and connections. Together, we could create something amazing." She proposed a 50-50 partnership where she would handle the business side and I would handle the creative side. "This could heal our relationship," she said, "working together on something positive." I sat there, listening to her pitch, keeping my face neutral. Inside, I was seeing the opportunity for the perfect revenge. Bethany thought she was manipulating me, using my design skills for her benefit while taking half the credit and profits. She had no idea that I could destroy her business from the inside. I pretended to think about it for a moment, then said yes. The look of surprise and triumph on her face was almost worth everything she had put me through. We signed a basic partnership agreement that week. Bethany was so eager to get started that she didn't do proper due diligence. She didn't research my existing business, didn't check my client list, didn't investigate my reputation in the industry. She just assumed she was the smart one, taking advantage of her little sister's artistic talents. She immediately started investing money in equipment, website development, and marketing materials. She was putting everything she had into this business. What Bethany didn't know was that I was playing a long game. While pretending to work on her business, I was Bethany's. He built a beautiful, functional website for my new company while creating a glitchy, problematic site for Bethany's. He made sure her site had broken links, slow loading times, and payment processing issues. But he did it so subtly that it looked like random technical problems rather than intentional sabotage. I would meet with Bethany twice a week to work on our business. She would talk endlessly about her marketing strategies and networking plans, while I pretended to design invitations. The designs I gave her were technically competent, but completely lacking in creativity. They were generic, boring, and looked like something you could buy at any stationery store. When she questioned the quality, I told her that we needed to start simple and build up to more complex designs. She accepted this because she didn't actually understand design herself. Meanwhile, my real business was exploding. I was creating innovative, beautiful invitations that were getting attention from wedding planners and brides across the country. I developed a signature style that incorporated hand lettering, watercolor elements, and custom illustrations. I partnered with high-end printers to offer letterpress and foil options. My Instagram following grew by thousands each month. Wedding blogs started featuring my work. All while Bethany thought I was working on her mediocre designs. The contrast between the two businesses was stark. Bethany would get occasional inquiries through her website, but the technical problems would often prevent people from completing orders. When they did manage to place an order, they would receive the uninspired designs I had created for her. Meanwhile, my business was getting 5-star reviews and recommendations from every client. I was booking weddings a year in advance while Bethany struggled to get even small orders. Bethany couldn't understand what was going wrong. She had invested thousands in social media advertising, but it wasn't converting to sales. She hired a social media manager who told her the designs weren't engaging enough. She hired a business consultant who said the website needed to be fixed. She spent more and more money trying to solve problems that I was actively creating. Every suggestion she received required more investment, and she was running out of money fast. About 3 months into our partnership, Bethany started getting desperate. She asked me to put in more hours, to create more elaborate designs. I told her I was doing my best, but that good design takes time. Whose children had used my services. They started asking questions about why my little side project was doing so well, while Bethany's serious business was struggling. I just smiled and said I had been doing this longer and had built up a client base. They had no idea about the sabotage. The wedding industry is surprisingly small, and word travels fast. Soon, vendors were talking about the two invitation companies, one that was exceptional and one that was terrible. They didn't know we were sisters, thanks to my using a professional name for my business. Wedding planners would actively steer clients away from Bethany's company and toward mine. Their designs are so dated, one planner told a bride at a wedding expo where both companies had booths. You should check out this other company instead. Bethany's booth at that wedding expo was a disaster. The banner had a typo that she didn't notice until it was hanging up. The sample invitations I had designed for her looked especially poor next to the competition. Her website crashed during the event, so she couldn't take orders. She spent the entire day watching brides walk past her booth to go to others, including mine, though she didn't know it was mine. She called me that night, crying, saying the expo had been a waste of money. 6 months into the business, Bethany was in serious financial trouble. She had maxed out her credit cards, taken a loan from our parents, and was considering a second mortgage on her condo. She was working 60-hour weeks trying to make the business succeed, but nothing was working. She would call me late at night, panicking about bills and asking if I could invest money in the business. I always said I didn't have any extra funds, even as my own business was bringing in 6 figures. The stress was affecting Bethany's health and appearance. She had always been perfectly put together, but now she looked exhausted all the time. Her hair was unkempt, her designer clothes were replaced with sweatpants, and she had developed dark circles under her eyes. At family dinners, she would rant about the unfairness of the market, how other companies must be cheating somehow. Our parents tried to offer advice, but they didn't understand the industry either. Then came the final blow. A major wedding magazine was doing a feature on up-and-coming invitation designers. They reached out to multiple companies, including both of ours. From conferences, my prices tripled, and clients were happy to pay them. I hired a team of assistants to help with the increased demand. I moved into a beautiful studio space in the trendy part of town. Success was sweeter because I had built it while simultaneously destroying Bethany's attempts to copy me. Bethany saw the magazine feature. She called me screaming, saying I had betrayed her by having a competing business. I calmly reminded her that I had been designing invitations for years before her business started, and that my separate venture wasn't part of our partnership agreement. She accused me of sabotaging her, which was true, but she had no proof. I told her that maybe she just wasn't cut out for the wedding industry. The silence on the other end of the phone was deafening. A week later, Bethany's business officially failed. She couldn't pay her bills, couldn't fulfill the few orders she and had to shut down the website. She had lost everything she had invested, plus the money our parents had given her. She was forced to file for bankruptcy and move back in with our parents because she couldn't afford her condo anymore. The girl who had always been the golden child, the successful one, was now a complete failure, and everyone knew it. The day her business officially shut down, she called me one more time. She was crying so hard I could barely understand her. "I need help," she said. "I've lost everything. Can you please lend me some money? Just enough to get back on my feet." I let her finish her desperate plea, then responded calmly. "No," I said. "You deserve better than to have a failed business. You deserve better than to have to beg your little sister for money. Just like Mark deserved better, right?" The sound she made was like a wounded animal. She finally understood that this hadn't been bad luck or market forces. She realized that I had orchestrated her downfall, that every problem she had faced was my doing. "You did this," she whispered. "You destroyed me on purpose." I didn't confirm or deny it. I just said, "You destroyed yourself the day you decided to humiliate me at my wedding." This is what consequences look like. My parents finally saw Bethany for who she really was during this time. When she was successful, she had been charming and generous with them. But in failure, she became bitter and mean. She blamed them, would inevitably launch into a rant about how I had ruined her life. They started to remember all the little cruel things she had done over the years, things they had previously overlooked. My grandmother, who had always favored Bethany, came to me one day and apologized. "I see now what she's really like," she said. "The way she behaved at your wedding should have been my first clue. I'm sorry I didn't support you." It was validating to hear, but it didn't erase the years of favoritism and dismissal. Still, it was something. Other family members followed suit, reaching out to apologize for taking Bethany's side without knowing the full story. Mark and I, meanwhile, were thriving. Our marriage was stronger than ever, built on a foundation of mutual respect and partnership. He had been promoted to senior architect and was working on prestigious projects. My invitation business had expanded into full wedding design and planning. We bought a beautiful house in the suburbs, the kind Bethany had always said she would own one day. We traveled to Europe for our anniversary, posting photos that I knew she would see and hate. About a year after her business failed, Bethany tried one more manipulation. She reached out to Mark directly, bypassing me. She sent him a long email about how she was worried about me, how she thought I had become vindictive and cruel, how this wasn't the sister she knew. She suggested that I might need professional help, that my behavior was concerning. She was trying to plant seeds of doubt in his mind, make him question my mental state. It was her last, desperate attempt to hurt our marriage. Mark forwarded me the email immediately, and we laughed about it together. He replied to her with a simple message: "My wife is perfect exactly as she is. Your opinion about her mental state is as irrelevant as your opinion about our marriage. Don't contact either of us again." He then blocked her email address and every possible way she could reach him. She had failed to divide us, just as she had failed at everything else she had attempted since the wedding. The last time I saw Bethany was at our cousin's wedding 2 years after mine. She looked older, defeated. The spark of malicious energy that had always driven her was gone. She sat alone at a table in the back while I sat at the family table with Mark. When it came time career and my family relationships, The fact that she failed didn't erase the attempts. My parents eventually came to understand why I had cut Bethany off. As they watched her spiral into bitterness and blame, they realized that her behavior at my wedding hadn't been an isolated incident, but part of a pattern they had been blind to. They apologized for not believing me, for always taking her side. Our relationship improved once they stopped pressuring me to reconcile with her. They learned to have separate relationships with us, seeing Bethany alone and visiting Mark and me without mentioning her. The wedding invitation business continued to grow. I eventually sold it to a larger company for a substantial profit, enough that Mark and I could pay off our mortgage and invest in our future. The success was publicized in industry publications, and I knew Bethany would see it. I wondered if she would recognize that her failure had directly contributed to my success, that her attempt to compete with me had only motivated me to build something bigger and better. Looking back now, I realized that Bethany's toast at my wedding was actually a gift. It showed everyone exactly who she was, removing the mask she had worn for so long. It gave me the permission I needed to finally fight back after years of taking her abuse. It freed me from the obligation to keep toxic family members in my life just because we shared DNA. Most importantly, it showed me that Mark would always stand by me, that his laughter in that moment wasn't at me, but at the absurdity of her jealousy. The revenge was satisfying in a way I hadn't expected. It wasn't just about destroying her business, though that felt like poetic justice. It was about finally standing up for myself, about refusing to be the victim anymore. It was about showing everyone, including myself, that I was the talented, successful, capable person that Bethany had always tried to diminish. Her downfall was just the natural consequence of her own cruelty and jealousy. Mark and I are expecting our first child now, a daughter. We've already decided that she will never know her Aunt Bethany. We'll raise her to be confident and kind, to support other women instead of tearing them down. We'll teach her that family isn't about blood, but about the people who truly love and support you. And if anyone ever tries to diminish her the way Bethany tried to diminish me, we'll teach her to fight back with intelligence. Denied. The best part of the revenge wasn't actually the business failure or the financial ruin, though those were satisfying. It was the complete reversal of our positions. Bethany had always been the successful one, the pretty one, the smart one. She had always looked down on me as less than her. Now she was the failure living with our parents, working a dead-end job, with no prospects for improvement. And I was the successful business owner, the happily married woman, the one with the bright future. The golden child had become tarnished, and the overlooked sister had become golden. I know some people would say I should forgive her, that holding on to anger is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die. But I'm not holding on to anger. I'm holding on to boundaries. I'm protecting my peace, my marriage, and my future children from someone who has proven repeatedly that she will cause harm given the opportunity. Forgiveness doesn't mean giving someone the chance to hurt you again. Sometimes the best revenge is simply living well and ensuring the person who tried to destroy you has no access to your happiness. The story of my wedding has become something of a legend in our social circle. People still talk about the inappropriate toast and how Mark handled it with such grace. They talk about how I built a successful business while my sisters failed. They connect the dots even if I never explicitly tell them about the sabotage. It's become a cautionary tale about jealousy and its consequences. And every time someone mentions it, I smile, remembering how her moment of cruelty became the foundation of her downfall. My husband's laughter at our wedding wasn't him dismissing what Bethany said. It was him recognizing it for what it was. The desperate act of a jealous, bitter person who couldn't stand to see someone else happy. He knew that the best response to such pathetic behavior wasn't anger but amusement. He laughed because he knew something Bethany didn't, that her opinion meant nothing, that our love was stronger than her hatred, and that her attempt to hurt us would ultimately hurt only herself. The wedding day that Bethany tried to ruin became perfect in retrospect. Yes, her toast was awful, but it led to everything that followed. It led to me standing up for myself, to building an even more successful business, to strengthening my marriage, and to watching her destroy herself with her own jealousy. Every anniversary, Mark and I actually toast to Bethany. Toxic relationships. It led me to self-respect and the knowledge that I could protect myself when needed. The sweetest revenge is living well, they say, and I'm living very well indeed. I have a loving husband who stood by me through everything. I have a successful career built on my own talents. I have a beautiful home and a baby on the way. I have family members who finally see and appreciate me for who I am. And I have the satisfaction of knowing that the person who tried to destroy my happiness is living with the consequences of her own actions. This is a story about how my husband's laughter on my wedding day was a symbol of our strength, not our weakness. It was a declaration that we wouldn't let jealousy and cruelty define our marriage. My sister's hateful words became the fuel for my revenge, but more importantly, they became the catalyst for my growth. She thought she was putting me in my place, but instead, she freed me to put her in hers. Bethany is now left with nothing but the echo of her own words. "He deserves better," she had said. Well, Mark got exactly what he deserved: a wife who would protect their marriage, build a successful life, and eliminate threats to their happiness. And Bethany got what she deserved too: a failed business, a tarnished reputation, and a lifetime of knowing that her little sister beat her at her own game. The golden child became fool's gold, while the overlooked sister became the real treasure. Revenge is a dish best served at a wedding reception, with champagne and a toast that backfires spectacularly. My wedding day was perfect, not in spite of Bethany's cruelty, but because of it. It marked the beginning of my new life, not just as Mark's wife, but as someone who would never again accept disrespect or abuse from anyone, especially family. That's the kind of transformation worth celebrating, and we celebrate it every single anniversary. Like this video and subscribe to hear more stories of sweet revenge. Remember that sometimes the best response to cruelty is strategic, calculated, and ultimately devastating revenge that leaves your enemies with nothing while you thrive. Don't let anyone tell you that revenge isn't worth it when someone tries to destroy your happiness. Sometimes revenge is exactly what you need to reclaim your power and protect your peace. And sometimes, just sometimes, revenge is the sweetest wedding gift you